new members here yet?
Yes, ma'am. Both of them are.
Okay, I didn't see them. Okay, good. Well, let me start then by saying welcome to Ms. Bird. Okay, sorry, something's going on.
I got some bad audio on Joyce.
Yeah,
Oh,
can you
Joyce?
hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any problems with it?
There's a bit of an echo.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Hey, Robert, you can mute everybody.
And maybe if everybody mutes themselves when they're not talking. How's that?
Let me crank up my volume. You're coming in a little.
All right. If I have to go back out and come back in, I will, but let's try to get through it. So let's call the meeting of the April 14th meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board to order. I want to welcome our new members, Ms. Bird and former Congressman Reyes. Thank you for joining us and agreeing to serve on the board. We look forward to working with you. Raymond, can you go ahead and do roll call and then read the mandatory intro for the Zoom meeting, please?
Yes, ma'am. So the roll call of the CRRMA board members. Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Patrick Byrne.
Here.
Nicholas Lamantia.
I think he's in the lobby. I saw his name on the lobby.
He's been accepted into the meeting, but he's muted.
Mr. Lamantia.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Zaragoza has said that he won't make it. Ms. Dorothy Bird. Ms. Bird. Robert, are you showing her?
Bird, you're on mute. She's here, but muted.
Let's come back to her. Mr. Reyes.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Ms. Bird? Ms. Bird, one last time.
Can you unmute her, Robert?
I don't have the ability to unmute her.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll have
try
to
calling her and see if she's having technical problems.
Yeah, Robert, would you mind handling that?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so as for the roll call, we have Mr. Zaragoza who's out and Ms. Bird who's having some technical issues. We'll work through those. So these are the required notices. Pursuant to the suspension of certain open meetings laws by Governor Greg Abbott, this CRRMA board meeting is being held by video and telephone conference. In accordance with the various federal, state, and local orders, the public may participate in the meeting using the video link or telephone conference information found on the CRRMA's website and on the posted agenda. This meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the CRRMA's website as soon as possible after conclusion of the meeting. During the meeting, each board member making a motion or a second should state who made each. The chair will then call for those in favor, against, or abstaining. The public is invited to participate in the meeting just as with all CRRMA meetings. If you are interested in asking a question or providing a comment, please submit a comment in the chat function of the video component or ask to be recognized by phone. If there are no questions from the board, we are ready to begin with the chair reading item 2 into the record.
Okay, item 2 is recognition of our former board members. Mr. Norwick, Michael Norwick Jr., and Luis Rojas. I'm assuming, are they here?
No, ma'am, I didn't see them. I did not see them in the list.
Okay, so I would like to use this as an opportunity to thank them for their service. And I know that we're purchasing a plaque as a memento, and we'll get that to them at our earliest convenience. Okay, very nice, Raymond. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've already introduced our new members, Miss Dorothy Byrd and former Congressman Sylvester Reyes. And again, thank you for joining us and agreeing to serve on the board. Next item is item 3, discussion and action on the election of the board secretary. That was vacated, I think, when, was Mr. Rojas the secretary?
Yes, ma'am, Mr. Rosas was.
Okay, so, and Mr. Burns, you agreed to serve as treasurer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right then. So do we have any volunteers to serve as board secretary? Hate to co-opt the new members since they just joined.
Thank-
Would you say thank you?
Yes.
Fortunately, it's not too demanding of a job. So why don't you reach out to Mr. Zaragoza and see if he'd be willing to do it? And explain to him the duties, okay?
I can do that, although I will mention that I believe since we will have action items today, we will need a secretary to attest to those.
Okay.
So we would need some kind of an action today.
Let me ask you, is there a reason why Mr. Burns couldn't serve as a combined secretary treasurer?
You know, I was just looking that up there. Give me one moment.
Because basically you just need to be a signatory, right?
That's right.
Attest the actions of the board and the documents.
You also, Jim, you also had me down as an assistant secretary at one time also for that reason. So I'd be willing to do that as well.
Okay, so why don't we do that? Why don't we appoint Colonel Smith as assistant secretary so we have a function? And then you can reach out to the other board members and see if either one of them would be willing to do it.
Okay, if you don't mind, just give me one more minute to run through the rest of the bylaws, just to make sure we're okay with that. Now, it actually does say neither the secretary nor the alternate secretary need be directors of the RMA.
Oh, really?
Right, so that could be.
Could I make Robert?
Right, Robert could serve as the secretary in the interim while we determine which board member would like to serve. Well,
Okay, does anyone object to us designating Robert as the interim secretary until the next meeting? And then Raymond, you could also reach out to the 2 new members as well as Mr. Zaragoza and just explain what the function is and see if anybody would like to. I don't just want to designate somebody without like making sure they're comfortable.
certainly.
All right. Then let's do that. Do we need board action for that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm going to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So we've got that done. Number 4 is adoption of the minutes of the board meeting of March 10th, 2021.
This is Jim. I move to approve.
Pat, second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any conversation, any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, thank you. So then we'll move to item 5, which is discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following documents as they relate to the I-10 widening project. A, state infrastructure bank loan agreement, and B, advanced funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. So Raymond, I'll turn it over to you and the team.
Thank you. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. I'm sharing my screen. What you see here is a white paper from the Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT, This provides the background on this particular project, I-10 widening project, which is really a widening of the interstate from roughly Mesa on the west side all the way to the state lines. They're adding a lane to the center. They are reconfiguring some of the entrances and exit ramps and adding some additional improvements along the frontage roads within this whole section. It's a large project. It's $170 million. And this has been designed by TxDOT and will be constructed by TxDOT as well. However, as read into the record, we're talking about two separate items, a SIB loan and an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT. The City of El Paso, the RMA, and TxDOT have decided to partner on this project. City of El Paso, as you know, has Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 2, which generates revenues, is a huge zone that goes from the west side all the way to the east side, and it includes this section or a section of this project as well. So what has been agreed to is that the City of El Paso has authorized, through prior actions, has authorized the RMA to borrow this $30 million and provide those $30 million to TxDOT for the completion of this project, using the Transportation Reinvestment Zone revenues as the repayment source. So that's really what you see here. Under item 5A is the agreement between the RMA and the State Infrastructure Bank, and I'm going to ask Robert to touch on the terms of that agreement here in a moment. So that brings the $30 million over to the RMA, and then under 5B, that agreement is between the RMA and TxDOT, whereby we provide that $30 million over to TxDOT, less the legal fees it cost us to put the deal together, which is about $34,000. So those are how the two agreements work, but I'll ask Robert to chime in on the terms of the SIB loan, which is under 5A.
Good morning, Robert Studer. I believe we have with us Emily Hunley from our financial advisor here in case you have any questions for her. I'm going to share my screen and just show you the draft amortization schedule. As Raymond mentioned, it's a $30 million loan. One of the parameters when we developed this with the city was using the current revenues generated by the Transportation Reinvestment Zone. Those were at about $3.6 million. We do have two existing loans within using those revenues, and so that was kind of our cap, is we knew we didn't want to have a more than $1.6 million annual repayment. So that was how we started developing the specs. Fortunately, when we applied in September for the loan, they had a program at the time that includes no interest for the first 3 years. And so you can see here, I hope you can see here, those first 3 years, our payments are going entirely to principal. And then actually, we have a draft disbursement date. Obviously, it depends on this board's approval and a couple other things, but we're using the 30th for now, and that may change. But because of the timing of that and our payments being in August, that fourth payment is also very largely principal only. That really reduces our overall costs, and when we re-amortize using that, lowers our payment and keeps us well below the amount the city had been concerned about. I would like to mention that that development process was really going on last spring and even into the summer, and by the time we'd come up with the rough parameters, the city received certified values last year. So the Transportation Reinvestment Zone values went from 3.6, I'm sorry, the values increased large enough that when multiplied against the city's tax rate, the values went from 3.6 million to 5.4 million. So there's now plenty of revenue to help support this debt service payment, as well as the two existing payments, and then a surplus beyond that. So that's really good news there. It is a 30-year deal. The interest rate is at 2.68%. It's a little higher than you may have been expecting based on current rates. As a reminder, the RMA is an unfunded agency, and because of that, the rate's a little bit higher than a rated agency you may have been able to get with a AAA or a AA plus rating. We did receive a lowering of our rate because El Paso is considered an economically disadvantaged county, and so that helped bring our rate down. But this is what the draft schedule looks like, and it does go through 2050 with the additional revenues that are available, and assuming continued growth. Ideally, we would pay this off earlier than that, but that is the schedule for now, and be happy to take any questions.
And with that, then again, 5A is the SIB loan, taking the money from the State Infrastructure Bank over to the RMA. 5B then is the agreement between the RMA and TxDOT, whereby we provide the $30 million to TxDOT, again, less the legal expenses required to execute these various agreements. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of both items 5A and 5B.
This is Jim. Just one question. Our relationship to this project is purely on the funding side. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, there are additional partnering projects related to this one that the RMA will likely play a role in between TxDOT and the City of El Paso. But on this I-10 widening project, we are simply providing the financing for this $30 million.
Okay, thank you.
But down the road, we may actually do some of the construction.
Not on this particular project, but there are other projects. By way of example, the City of El Paso is interested in developing frontage roads at Executive heading west.
Okay,
So we may assist with that project.
okay, fine. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Jim, I move to approve.
Sissy Bird, I second it.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of the first extension of the contract for OCS reconfiguration at the El Paso Streetcar Maintenance and Storage Facility with Tri-State Electric Limited.
Okay, for this one, Raymond Case again. This is, as read into the record, this is simply an extension of the agreement that we entered into with Tri-State. What you see on your screen before you, and hopefully you can make this out, the OCS system is the overhead contact system, and that's the power system that is above the streetcar project. And actually, let me take a step back, as for the benefit of the newer members. The RMA was brought in as a partner for the streetcar project in order to complete the construction activities that were originally designed by the City of El Paso. So the city designed the program, TxDOT brought the construction funding, and the RMA put them together, built it, and then turned it over to Sun Metro for operation. However, one of the design characteristics in the maintenance and storage facility for the program is what you see here on your screen. This is the overhead contact system, the OCS. So when the streetcar rolls into the maintenance and storage facility, it's still connected to this overhead power system. This power system goes all the way to the end of the storage facility. And as you notice, there's a balcony area here where if you're walking under here, you're under a live wire. Now it's insulated and it's protected. However, that was the original design provided by the city. Well, once we were complete once the project was complete, the city asked if we would go in and modify it so that the overhead contact system ends over the bay, so that in effect what you see is this line no longer continues to the end of the facility, it ends early. So that's what we designed, and that's what this project was. Now, so we went and did a procurement and entered into an agreement with Tri-State Electric to complete this revision. We anticipated about 2 months worth of activities. Unfortunately, the materials were delayed on this one. So what you see before you is really more of a housekeeping item than anything else. We're extending out the contract to the end of this month. The work has been completed, and we'll be able to close this project before May. So that's what you see before you is this extension. Hopefully that answers any questions you may have, but I'm happy to answer any more. Subject to those questions, I would recommend approval.
And what was the cost on that, Raymond?
The cost was, I apologize, I thought I had that up. It was approximately $34,000. Let me pull it up for you 1 second. I apologize, I should have had that handy.
But the work's already been done and this is just paying for it, right?
That's right. $33,750.
Okay, thank you.
Raymond, you might want to explain about that, about the account that money came out of.
Sure. As I mentioned, TxDOT provided the construction funding for this particular project. They gave us a grant of $97 million, and that's what we're using to pay for this. The project was completed on schedule and under budget. We had some funds left over, and in fact, I believe after this project, we've got about $300,000 left. We're working with the city to see if there's any other modifications or any additional activities that they want completed. If not, we will be returning those funds to TxDOT as part of the grant process. But that's how we're funding this project.
I make a motion that we accept this proposal. Authorize this.
Thank you.
I have a motion.
I second it. Jim?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 7, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following documents as they relate to O.T. Smith Shared Use Path Project. 7A, amendment to interlocal with El Paso County, and B, amendment to work authorization number 2 with CEA Engineering Group, Inc. Raymond, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I knew that would happen at some point. This project is a project that we are developing in partnership with the County of El Paso. It's a shared use path, which is basically a hike and bike trail. This first graphic here shows you where it is. Tornillo obviously is just a little bit east of Fabens. And to zoom in on it, it's basically the stretch of O.T. Smith Road from I-10 heading down to Alameda in Tornillo, and it is the shared use path. And here's visually what you're seeing. You see the hike and bike path of about 10 feet with a parkway of about 5 feet with some additional streetlights and that sort of thing. So that's the project for you. On this particular item has 2 actions. Item 7A is an amendment to the interlocal with the County of El Paso. As I mentioned, we are partnering with the county on this one. They are providing the funds for the completion of this project. This amendment today is seeking an additional $34,999.76 from the county. That's under item 7A. And I should mention the reason for these additional funds is that the county had requested additional support services from our testing firm. Let me back it up. When we agreed to develop this project for the county, one of the things that we are providing to them are construction, testing, and oversight services. And the way that we're doing that is through providing the services through CEA Engineering Group. And they're here locally in town, and that's what you see under 7B. So anyhow, under item 7A, we're requesting just under $35,000 from the county to provide those additional services that they requested of us. And under 7B, CEA is providing those services under an amendment to their work authorization. And I apologize, I should have been more clear with the way I laid that out, but hopefully it makes sense. Subject to your questions, though, I would recommend approval of items 7A and 7B.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Sissy Bird, on 7A, you said the 35,000, would that end this project, or it could be more expenses later?
We believe that should be it. The 34,000 should get us through the end of the project. So we believe this will be the last amendment.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept this 7A and 7B.
All right, thank you.
Second, Pat, second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 8, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of amendment to work authorization number 27.7 with Atkins North America as it relates to the Mission Ridge Boulevard Phase 2 project.
Okay, for this project, this is another project that we're partnering with the County of El Paso. This is under the 2013 Comprehensive Mobility Plan program with the county. To orient you, this is Loop 375 to the left. This is Pelicano heading east, and then heading south off of Pelicano is Mission Ridge. And to remind some of the older board members, this first segment here is Mission Ridge Phase 1, which we completed for the county a couple years back. This darker section here is the extension of Mission Ridge, and that's what we're talking about today. It's the extension from where we completed it, the Phase 1, and then connecting up to eventually Paseo del Este and then eventually East Lake. So that's Mission Ridge 2 project. Here's a visual of what it will look like. So on this particular project, we have, as you know, our general engineering consultant team, Atkins, provides construction phase services for the majority of our program, including this project. We had an original work authorization with them to complete those services. We amended that original work authorization with amendment number 1 to add funds for additional services to add a relief route, which was requested by the county. And now what you see before you today is amendment number 2 to add an additional $186,000. That's related to the extension of the project time. It's taken us a little bit longer than originally anticipated to complete this project. So there are, and I would mention also, this project includes water improvements for the El Paso water utilities. So the water utilities is providing, of that $186,000, just over $33,000 for additional water oversight services, and then the county will provide an additional $53,000 for the general project oversight services. So when you put those together, that's how you arrive at the $186,000 under this work authorization. I'll mention, because the water is providing $33,000 and the county is providing $186,000, they have both reviewed and approved those amounts and are supportive of this change. I believe we have someone from the county available to discuss this should you have any questions. So with that, I would recommend approval subject to any questions you may have.
Are there any questions?
Jim, I move to approve.
Sissy, I second it.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 9, presentation and discussion on change orders recently approved by the executive director for the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, share the screen on this one. So this one, for the benefit of the new members, there was a board resolution that was executed back in 2018 that authorizes the executive director to approve construction change orders in amounts up to $100,000 without seeking prior board approval. However, in instances in which I do that, I have to bring those change orders to the very next board meeting. I would mention too, there is another provision within that resolution that if a change order approval is in excess of $50,000, so between $50,000 and $100,000, I have to also send you an email and let you know right after I've taken that action. So you may recall over the weekend, I sent you an email with notice of one of those change orders, and we'll go through that here in a moment. So what you're going to see on this slide deck is 5 different change orders that were approved over this last month. There are 3 pending and none that require board action. These are all for your information, so there won't be any action requested. We're talking about East Lake Boulevard Phase 1 first, highlighted there with the arrow. These are the prior change orders that you see that have all been approved to date. These are some more through number 15 through number 25. And of course, this is part of your board backup. But if you have any questions, please stop me along the way. So you'll see some pending. Number 29 is pending, as is number 33. What was approved this past month up for this project was number 31, which was a stem, wall, and pond wrought iron fence that was added at the request of the county for $54,912.68. This was the email that you received from me because it is in excess of the $50,000 threshold. Then number 35 was also approved, which added signage at the county's request for an additional $17,103.58. So this is the total. You see the cleanup change order, which is always how we end a project, or normally how we end a project, is pending, but this gives you the details on the various change orders to date for that project. So now moving on to Pelicano. These are the previously approved change orders, and what you see is 2 that were approved by me over the prior month. Number 7, we removed illumination poles for $5,000, and then number 8, we relocated concrete barrier and the fence that was encroaching on private right-of-way, and that one cost $41,827.23. Both of these were reviewed and approved by the county and have been executed. Incidentally, of course, we have someone from our general engineering consultant team available and the county should you have any questions on any of these and you want to get into any detail. Otherwise, the last one would be on Vista del Sol, which is highlighted by that the arrow. These were the prior change orders. Again, all of this is in your backup, so I'll flip through this. The very last change order there that you see that was approved just yesterday, in fact, was to install additional signs and sealed concrete for a little over $7,000. That was approved yesterday, and the remaining project details are shown there. So that's what I have for you. Again, no action is required, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? So for the new members, you'll see these occasionally during each board meeting where there'll be small activity like this. So if not, then I'm going to go to item 10, which is presentation and discussion on the following reports for the second quarter of fiscal year 2020. Interim financial statement and budget update, investment report, El Paso Bike Share program, the Sun Cycle program, and the general engineering consultant team's use of local resources.
Good morning, Robert Studer for the record. I'll be handling items A, B, and C. As a refresher, until we appointed Ms. Bird to the Finance Committee, we only had 2 members, and that can make it difficult to get a quorum at a meeting, so we canceled last week's meeting and we did not meet. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time than I usually do in front of the board since we didn't meet as a committee last week. Another reminder, and can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. These interim statements are provided by the city of El Paso. They are unaudited. We actually use this as a great opportunity to review the activity and make sure that all the transactions we've requested them to record have been recorded correctly. We did find some things that were maybe misapplied to the wrong account or things like that, and have requested those changes be made. Another thing I'd like to note is that the city provides.
Robert, we don't have. I don't have your screen. All I got's the agenda.
Let me unshare and try and reshare.
Okay.
Good now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have a management services agreement with the city, whereas they provide us services. This is one of those things that they've agreed to provide us. We do pay for that now. So Jim and Joyce, you may remember that we renegotiated that deal with the city last year and agreed to that in March. And one of those changes is that we now pay for a portion of a senior accountant's time to make sure that we're getting the services that we request. We originally agreed to do that at half of that person's time with the understanding that we would come back a year later and reevaluate the hours that were spent on it. We just performed that evaluation, and instead of paying for a half for the next year, we'll only pay for a third of that person's time as we're not using them as much as originally anticipated. So that's a good little savings to the RMA itself. Some big things I want you to keep an eye out. I'm going to point out to you here is the Spur 601 project that we were getting pass-through toll payments.
Robert, we just have your cover sheet there.
I have not moved on yet, sir.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kind of going over review, but thank you. So you're going to see that several times throughout it. We received the last pass-through toll payment, and then we made the last payment to the developer, and then we drew down the remaining funds at that. And so you can see that here, our cash and cash equivalents from the end of the fiscal year has gone up by more than $5 million. That's the drawdown of those funds that were left over following the paying of the debt service and then paying the developer payments. The due from other governments, you can see after we received those funds, we no longer are expecting to receive funds, and so that decreased as well. And so that's another big shift that I want to point out to you here. The other thing I'd like to point out is that review of activity. When we made that developer payment, instead of being recorded against the liability, it was actually initially recorded as an expense. I caught that during the review of the financial statements, and so this number we know is too high from what the city originally provided to us, and that will come down by more than $7 million. And so that does have an impact on the bottom line as presented here, but these are just interim statements, and we do work with the city to clean those up. Next, we're going to look at what's our equivalent of an income statement. I would like to point out that our revenue for the bike share is higher than it's ever been through 6 months, usually the second quarter, and I will touch on this more during our review of the bike share program. We are about $12,000 higher in revenue than we were at the same time last year. Vehicle registration fee income, we are continuing to collect. There's a little bit of a lag, but we're on pace to collect between $6.5, $6.7 million that we normally collect from the county's $10 registration fee, and then use that to service the debt for the VRF program. The TRZ revenues I mentioned during item 5A, that those went up, and so at this point in the fiscal year, we've collected more than we did at the same time last year, largely because values went up and therefore revenues generated went up. And then that $5.9 million that we drew down following the closure of the Spur 601 project, that can be seen here under service fees, and that's making up the bulk of this. A couple other items I'd like to note is one of the things that we've worked with the city on is changing the way we record some expenses. Our auditors notified us that they were basically having to do a reclassification entry every year. So after the audit a year ago, we worked with the city to change our accounting structure a little bit, and that is making it a little bit clearer of what is actually happening. So if you look at last year, we had engineering services of $2.7 million. Well, most of those are actually should have been classified as transfers out to other entities because they're related to capital projects. Instead, our auditors would often have to make that change at the year end. So we changed the way that we're recording those entries, and instead of seeing that large number up here, it's now part of this intergovernmental transfer of assets, which is basically we are completing a project for the county, and so it's not an expense of the RMA. We're giving that over to the county on East Lake 1 or Mission Ridge that Raymond mentioned earlier, and so it's just making it a little bit clearer of what our, as an RMA, expenses are in this category. The last thing I'd like to note is this federal tax credit, the Build America bonds. So we talked about the $30 million SIB loan on item 5A. Our first SIB loan was also for $30 million, and that was done about 11 years ago, and at the time we flipped it into a Build America bonds credit. Normally we receive that payment in August. However, due to the pandemic and the multiple stimulus checks that went out last year, we did not receive those funds until December. And so when we look at our operating budget, we actually will have 2 of those that come in this year, ideally, if we do get paid back on time in August. And so this $304,000 was really something we planned to receive last fiscal year, but because of the delay in payment from the IRS, we did not receive it until December. Are there any questions on the balance sheet or on the income statement? And I know I went quick, tried to highlight just a couple points because we did not have the finance committee meeting, but are there any questions on that before I move on to our operating budget? Okay, so here's where that BABS credit, half of it goes to help cover the interest on that first SIB loan, half of it comes to the RMA as a revenue to us. It's our fee, if you will. So that is quite a bit higher than we expect to receive in the current year, and we do expect to receive a second one. Again, that SPUR 60 revenue, you can see here, has been received this year. And then our expenses are pretty low. I would point out we do have $100 under travel. That is really just a reimbursement to me. Rain and I both attended the Texas Transportation Forum as we usually do. It was virtual this year. So we just only reimbursed me so far, and Raymond's actually happened after the quarter closed for our registration fee for that. But beyond that, there's nothing too exciting on our revenues and expenses. And so that's item 10A. I'd be happy to take any questions on that if you have any. Not hearing any, I'm going to jump to item 10B, our investment report. Jim, will you let me know if you are able to see the investment report now that I've switched over? I believe you're muted, Jim.
You're muted.
Jim, you're muted.
I am not able to see it.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare, and I'll do that for each of these. Are you able to see it now, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, interest rates remain fairly low. We do have Emily Hunley with our financial advisor here in case you have any questions from her. She has been great in talking with me and putting me some contact with folks in her firms at looking at other options. At the time, though, we're not suggesting we make any changes. I would like to point out again, those funds we drew down following the closure of the SPUR 601, you can see our starting balance and our funds held with the city, and then our closing balance, and that's largely driven by that money, that one-time revenue that we received. Those funds were coming into and out of this account, so in the future, this account will no longer be on our report. We've closed that account. You can see that the money, the payment from TxDOT and some interest was earned during the quarter, and then the payment was made to the developer and we drew down, and then there's no money remaining at the end of the quarter. And then we continue to spend on our VRF projects, which is where we hold, BNY Mellon is where we hold those funds. So we started with about 34.5 million. We ended up with about 32.5 million. That's pretty standard pace for how we're spending our money around this time. And then the details here, if you'd like to dive into that any further. Any questions on the investment report? And one other thing I'd actually like to add is that as the investment officer, I'm required to take training on the Public Funds Investment Act every 2 years. My training expires in June, so I'm going to register to take it either at the end of this month or in May. There's 2 different sessions I'm looking at.
Where do they have that? Hawaii?
I used to go to Arlington and stay with family that I have that live there to help keep costs low, but they're all virtual right now. Unfortunately, Texas training doesn't go to Hawaii, but if it is, Jim, I'll let you know. You can join me. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this one so I can make sure that Jim is able to see the bike share presentation. Okay, Jim, you got the bike share?
I got it.
All right, great. So again, we're looking at the time frame from December 1st through February 28th. Whoa, sorry, a little fast there. We're going to talk about our COVID-19 response, especially for our new board members, the summary activity, some highlights, and then we'll talk about the second quarter activity. So in response, we have changed to increase our cleaning. We're using a disinfectant cloth out on the kiosk, the handlebars, and so on. Our team goes out there to service bikes to see if we have flats, make sure everything's running. They'll wipe and clean off the kiosk and the bikes that are out there, and then of course the bikes that come in the shop get cleaned as well. They are using gloves when doing that. We are rebalancing bikes, so if there's a highly trafficked station like San Jacinto, we'll pull those bikes and bring in less used bikes from either in storage that have just been fixed up or from another station to help keep those bikes clean at those higher traveled stations. And then we are reminding customers that they can use the app, and they are using that more frequently in the past. We're up to about 16% of our checkouts now occur on the app. So summary of activity, we've got our prior years here, and then we've got the current quarter. As noted previously, the second quarter is usually, I think every year has been our least successful quarter. We just, the weather, the wind, the cooler weather, we do not see as many rides as we do in the other 3 quarters. However, we had a record quarter this time around, and you'll see that on some subsequent graphs, both for rides and for revenue. So we're very happy about that as the increased activity we saw from COVID continues. So ridership did increase about 27%. Last year we were around 1,700 rides, or I'm sorry, 1,800 rides, and this year we're almost to 2,300 rides during this quarter. For the year, we're up almost 1,400 trips. Peak hours remain in the evenings, especially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. San Jacinto remains our busiest station by far, and Arts Festival Plaza, we're very happy we were able to reinstall that last year, as that's now doing very well and in second place. The station at the county courthouse is out of service still, as they are working on some reconfigurations around their entrance. That's taken a little bit longer than we'd hoped, but hopefully we can get that back in. And then, as I mentioned on the last slide, 16% of day passes are now being booked through the mobile application. So here's our ridership. As you can see, it is quite a bit higher than the last 2 years, and the best we've had, and so we're very happy with that our ridership continues to grow. The next one, I hope that you see very clearly, though, our revenue is up quite a bit over where it was last year. We were giving out more promo codes in prior years. We've pulled that back, and we've taken some other management changes to help let people know when they've had an overage fee that we've seen that overage fee, and that we're aware of it, and we've seen a decrease in disputes of people saying that they were not aware of that. And so our revenue really jumped up, and people we think are riding longer and therefore racking up some more overage fees. Here's the lifetime expenses of the program, our year-to-date expenses, and our quarterly expenses. We do plan on taking some information about the sustainability program to the Finance Committee. I will be talking with Mr. Byrne as the chair of that committee, whether he wants to meet before our next scheduled meeting in late June or early July. To have that meeting now, we are having some preliminary discussions with sponsors, and those are going really well, actually. And so we hope to have some exciting news before too long, but I will be reaching out to Mr. Byrne to possibly schedule a meeting to go over that specifically with the Finance Committee to give them a full update on that. And that's all I have for you. Are there any questions on the Sun Cycle program?
I have a question, Sissy Bird.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
You said the bikes are taken. How often are the bikes taken to be cleaned?
So I think I don't have a firm answer on that. I can get that for you. We do, I think on a daily basis, go out into the field to check and see, do we have bikes that have had physical damage? Do they have flat tires? Do they need some kind of repair in the shop, at which point we'll bring them in. But when the team's going out to do those assessments, I believe they are wiping down the bikes. They're not going to every single station every single day, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But as I think you may have seen in the last week or two, the CDC has basically realized that transmission is not happening through touch as much as we may have thought a year ago.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? All right. That's what I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Very briefly then, under item 10D, as part of our regular process, we include the general engineering consultant team's use of local resources as a PowerPoint as part of your backup, and that is available to you. And we do have a representative from our general engineering consultant team should you have any questions. Otherwise, no action is required on any of these items 10A through 10D.
Okay. Then we'll move on to staff reports, item 11. A, Paso del Norte Trail, recent submittal of funding request, and B, House Bill 4532, Senate Bill 2140 regarding proposed I-10 deck plaza project. Raymond? Who's doing that? Raymond, are you there?
believe Mr. Tejas just got dropped a second ago.
There he is.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I just dropped. Apologies. So I think we're still talking about items 11A and B. So
Yes.
these will be very brief, just updates. No action is requested on either item. Item 11A relates to the Paso del Norte Trail. This one, I've included the master plan developed by the Paso del Norte Health Foundation into your board backup, so you can review that at your leisure. In essence, what this is for the benefit of the new members, this is a plan, a trail that is being planned by the Paso del Norte Health Foundation that is approximately 68 miles in length from county line to county line. And the idea is to link all of these different segments of trail into one single trail, so that if you're interested, or folks that are riding through can go all the way through the county on a designated trail. It's a very exciting, interesting project. This board has exhibited its support of this project through a resolution, I want to say a year, maybe 2 years ago, and we are supporting different phases and different segments of it. The reason it's on the board agenda today is that we were asked last week by the Health Foundation if we would support them in a request to the Congresswoman Escobar's office for some funding for a segment that goes roughly between Magoffin and Cotton all the way over to the El Paso Zoo at Paisano and Boone. What the request is approximately $3.6 million of federal funds for that particular project, and the idea would be that we request those funds. It would be matched with matching local funds from the Paso del Norte Health Foundation and the Water Improvement District, which is doing some canal lining in that area. Those expenditures would serve as our match, and the RMA would then be tasked with designing and constructing that particular phase of the project. So wanted to let you know about that. Very exciting project. I'll keep you posted, of course, as the process goes through its process through the Congresswoman's office. The other item then is 11B, which relates to House Bill 4532, which was written by State Representative Lina Ortega, and the companion bill, which is Senate Bill 2140, written by our Senator Blanco. Both bills deal with the same thing, and that is related to the El Paso Deck Plaza, I-10 Deck Plaza project. By way of background, for the benefit of our newer members, as you may know, TxDOT is working on a design plan, a project to reconstruct I-10, major segments of I-10, but for purposes of this item, in particular, the downtown segment, which would go roughly from Porfirio Diaz over to about Cotton. And that project is referred to as Downtown 10 by TxDOT. It's a major operation, of course. It would tear out the roadway, go down through the base and reconstruct up. It would also tear down the bridges across the trench right now that connect downtown up into the uptown area, and would reconstruct fewer. Among the various versions that TxDOT is looking at, one version has fewer bridges coming back. However, what's also interesting is that there's a separate initiative by some local groups here to potentially develop what they're calling the Deck Plaza project, and that is in between the bridges that are reconstructed under TxDOT's Downtown 10 project would be green space covering the trench, and that green space project is known as the Deck Plaza project. Well, the question has come up as to whether the RMA could support that effort to do the Deck Plaza. The existing legislation is a little bit gray, so what we've done is worked with Representative Ortega and Senator Blanco to draft some language that would explicitly allow us to participate in that type of project. So, as I mentioned, House Bill 4532 was drafted by Lina Ortega. It went through the House Transportation Committee last week, and I testified in support of that bill, and it went through. Senate Bill 2140 has not been scheduled for a hearing just yet through its Transportation Committee on the Senate side, but I anticipate testifying in favor of that one once it does come up. And of course, I'll keep you posted as we go through the legislative session. Anyhow, in either event, both items 11A and 11B are informational only. No action is required of either, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. If there are none, that's all Robert and I have for you today.
Hey, Raymond, what is there an estimate of the cost?
For which?
For this
the Deck Plaza?
The Deck Plaza, yeah.
The Deck Plaza, There, I believe, there is. Let me find that number and I'll email it to the rest of the board this afternoon. I believe there is an estimate for both the Deck Plaza and the Downtown 10 project, and I'll find both of those and share those with you. They're very preliminary estimates, of course. No design work has been started on either of them. In fact, TxDOT is still in the environmental phase, if I remember correctly, for the Downtown 10, but there are some general numbers that have been shared with the public, so I'll provide those to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Raymond, when you testified, was there any pushback to expanding our ability to do this?
Not from the committee. There are some regulars, I'll call them, that attend those transportation committee hearings, and those folks are opposed to RMAs generally, and I'll say that
Okay.
outright. That's pretty clear. So there was some opposition about RMAs doing anything outside of roadways. Of course, that opposition generally started with the tolling issues and that sort of thing, but nothing specific from the committee members.
Okay. All right, thanks. Are there any other questions? If not, then I think we've concluded all of our business. I want to confirm that Mr. Reyes, you have asked to serve on the planning committee. Is that correct? That you've expressed an interest in being on that committee?
That's correct.
And then Ms. Byrd on the finance committee?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to confirm those appointments, and then whatever paperwork I need to sign later, I will, Raymond. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining our board. Look forward to working with you, hopefully in person in the near future.
Yes.
And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Pat, so moved.
Okay,
I second it.
we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.